No one.
What's going on, Gator Nation? Welcome back to the Gators Online Show. No Zach Albaverdi this week, but that just means we get Corey Bender in the hot seat. Corey, how's it going? And welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Nick. How you doing, man?
Doing well. It's a busy time for me right now. Busy time for you with recruiting. But we'll start with some football news. Florida gets a new defensive coordinator this week. After Patrick Toney left last week, Florida officially announces Austin Armstrong as defensive coordinator. He will be the youngest defensive coordinator in Power 5 football, in all of Division I football next year, at just 29 years old. Armstrong was a hot name. I was told after last season, Kirby Smart was talking to him and said, hey, if Will Muschamp leaves, we're going to bring you in as sort of a defensive coordinator in waiting. That sounds great for a 29-year-old to get a job offer like that, or a potential job offer like that from a two-time defending national champion. He also had interest from Oregon, and then Nick Saban hired him. So you get the Saban stamp of approval from Armstrong, and you get to Alabama, and you last there about 8 days before Billy Napier calls up and says, hey, how about instead of inside linebackers, you come be our defensive coordinator. He's only been on the road or only been in Gainesville for a little bit, but right now recruiting will be picking up. Has he reached out to any recruits yet, Corey?
Yeah, he has. He's reached out to all the defensive commits. He's reached out to some of the newly offered targets too. I mean, Florida's been offering a lot of kids in recent weeks. Several offers been handed out. So he wasted a little time, kind of initiating those conversations, trying to build those relationships. I mean, 2024 class is still very early. We still have about 9 months until the early sign period. So that's plenty of time. I think with these coaching changes, the hard part was the timing as far as the spring practice. That's the tough part, on field stuff. But when it comes to recruiting, there's plenty of time to kind of build those relationships. So I think overall, the response has been good. I've talked to a few kids that said they love his energy, his passion for the game. Just, how eager he was to get those kids on the phone. They felt like priorities, as far as like how fast he got on the phone with them. So all's trending up, on the recruiting trail. It's going to take time to really manufacture, those tight-knit type of relationships. But, early on, the response has been good.
And it will be a little awkward, I think, as Florida opens spring practice on Saturday at 11 a.m. The Gators will hit the field with 2 less coaches than they're allowed to have. I've been on the phones all week. I would like Billy Napier to make a decision so I can stop making phone calls about this. On Wednesday, Napier had 7 wide receiver coach candidates in the office for interviews. I was told none of those were hired at the time, and 3 more potential candidates will be in this weekend. Get a chance to watch practice as well as get interviewed. You'd like to have a full 10 on-field coaches, but I think there's a little, wink, wink. Florida has a lot of GAs and analysts, and they won't be coaching during the 15 minutes that we're out there. But I'd imagine they have enough people on the field during practice to make a practice go, Corey.
I think especially at wide receiver. I mean, I think at wide receiver, you saw when Kerry Colbert took the Denver job, he kind of gave assistant wide receivers coach David Doker that stamp of approval.
Yeah.
I know he won another award. I think it was 30 under 30. It was some type of award that he got a lot of recognition for. And I thought the timing of that was pretty interesting. It was that morning when, word got out that On3 reported that Kerry Colbert was headed to NFL, and just around that time, within that same hour, David Doker was getting a stamp of approval, all over the internet. It was kind of like, hey, if we do go with this guy's legit. Here's the awards and all that type of thing. And I've heard that from recruits too. He's active on the recruiting trail. A lot of the wide receivers that have been offered in this class speak with Coach Doker. So I think on the field for spring practice, I don't think there's really a rush at wide receiver. I think they're comfortable with Doker calling the shots, at least for now. Or if they do promote him, I think it's one of the guys you and I have kind of done our research on, one of the guys that's under consideration. So I think that's definitely one of the positions where maybe Florida doesn't feel as rushed. I mean, you have Armstrong in replacing Tony. I think tight end is going to be the most interesting one as far as a coaching search. A lot of candidates that I think maybe some people aren't too familiar with, unless you're a overall college football fan. So
sure,
that's going to be the one that's going to be very interesting. And I think with tight end, Florida needs to really kind of hit on all cylinders when it comes to this 2024 cycle. I mean, they signed a tight end last cycle, but it was Tony Livingston really signed 2 cycles ago, but he carried over. And he's kind of a raw playmaker. I remember when they initially recruited him under the Dan Mullen staff. They liked him offensive tackle. And that was at the very beginning. But as time went on, he plays basketball. He kept leaning out. And they didn't think he could keep on the necessary weight. So tight end this cycle, before Peebler took the Arizona Cardinals job, there's a lot of tight ends in this cycle that Florida has been in the running for. And Florida's been near the top of the list for a lot of them. So I think that's going to be the position where, Florida might need to make up some ground with whoever they hire at that position. Walter Matthews, he's a 6'7" target out of Georgia. I asked him right when Peebler took the job, does this affect your recruitment? He's like, no, but, he recruited me harder than any other school. Like, that relationship was really strong. And some other kids said, hey, it does affect my recruitment. So I think, wide receiver is kind of the more flashy position, between that and tight end. But I think Florida probably feels more comfortable deep down, obviously, because you have Doker. But that's tight end is going to be the one position I'm definitely monitoring the most as far as finding that new coach.
And I think that tight end position is, as a tight end coach, I like Tim Brewster, but I don't think Tim Brewster is a revolutionary X's and O's coach. He did a good job coaching the guys that he had, and he was an assassin on the recruiting trail. I think, especially in this Florida offense where you're going to have a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets, you've got tight end, at least in 2020, was just an extension of the offensive line. Like, there's not much to coach there. I think Florida needs to get someone who is a great recruiter at that position.
I think Larry Scott too doesn't get enough credit for what he did with Kyle Pitts, and I get Brewster. I mean, that's why when when Pitts won the award, they had Scott and Brewster, in the same picture, because it wasn't all Brewster. And even Brewster.
Hey, Brew will tell you he'll take the credit for Kyle Pitts. Brew put Pitts on his resume.
Yeah, and I kind of went on Twitter when all that went down, saying that, hey, Larry Scott deserves a lot of credit for the development of Kyle Pitts. And it's just funny how that all worked out, because I know when they had Felipe Franks, he didn't really target Pitts that often. It was really the Kentucky game when Franks unfortunately went down and Trask came in, and all of a sudden Pitts became a top target. Like, they had some type of chemistry from practice. It's almost like Pitts and Trask benefited each other as far as how far they went in the draft over their career at Florida. And that's the thing too. I know Brewster's, obviously he's at Colorado. Someone told me recently that he kind of was one of those coaches that inquired about the Florida job, like, now that it's back open again. And but he's happy at Colorado. They're doing big things under Deion Sanders early on, at least on the recruiting trail. But it's fun. Brewster has that reputation for being a good recruiter, but when you look at his time at Florida, there was a lot of guys he didn't close on, And so it's kind of, you can bring him in as a big name guy, but I just don't know how that would really sit with the fan base. If you brought Brewster back for a second stint, what do you think the response would be if they brought him back?
I think there's a lot of the fan base that thinks Brewster's washed, that his best days are behind him. I think. And maybe they're right. I don't know, because if you look at his list when he was at FSU specifically, his list of the recruits that he landed, he got Dalvin Cook to troll Florida for months, and then go to Florida State. And Dalvin Cook might be Dalvin Cook's on probably the Mount Rushmore of Florida State football players in the history of their football program. So he's shown that he can recruit, but are you still connecting with kids at this level? How much does NIL change recruiting and what they can do? So to me, I wouldn't think. I just don't think there's many sexy names at tight end. So it's a familiar name and fans might like that, but also because it's familiar and it wasn't great. I don't give him much or any really credit for Kyle Pitts. I mean, Kyle Pitts came in, I remember, and then as a tight end in the first spring practice I go out to, he's playing wide receiver, and I'm like, what? This is a waste. Like he's not a wide receiver. And I think that only benefited him, in his route running and footwork once he moved back to tight end. But I think Brewster would be a good hire. I don't know that Florida's talking to him at all about it. I think that might be one-sided in terms of interest there. But yeah, I think Florida's going to go into open practice Saturday with 2 less coaches than they should have.
Well, even going back to what you're saying too, though, with recruiting, it's like you can get these big hires there, coaches that have a good resume when it comes to recruiting. Yeah, I just don't think. I mean, you're always going to need good recruiters, but the whole NIL factor, I feel like, has just changed everything. I feel like from recruiting from A to Z, I mean, you need those relationships to kind of jumpstart, that relationship between the school and the kid. But when it comes down to signing, and say if you have 4 schools that are somewhat hovering in the same spot, it really comes down to, okay, not every kid, but a lot of these big name kids, the NIL factor. So it's like, I feel like you need the good coaches that are, the good recruiters to kind of jumpstart everything. But it's like kind of with Corey Raymond. I mean, really, a lot of people were like if it wasn't for NIL, when all that, part of me thinks Corey Raymond, he gets Cormani McLean, in previous classes. Like, I feel like there's a lot of, that was just a whole roller coaster when it comes to that whole thing. I know Miami, and kudos to Miami too, man. A lot of people, we got everyone in the media kind of got destroyed because no one had him going to Miami. Every single analyst, every prediction had him going to Florida, but that's what you do. And you kind of, that was the vibe all across the country. But then when NIL kind of enters the picture and stuff gets rearranged at the last second, it's hard to really put those predictions on those 5-star kids now because it could change within, the last hour or two, so it's interesting, man. So they need to get a good recruiter at these positions, but NIL, I feel like that's just the game changer when you're at a school like Florida.
Yeah, and they keep saying it's going to be a positive for Florida. We're still waiting to see that. I think once you get to Florida, you're looking at all these tweets and things online, and Florida is taking care of the guys that are on campus. But then you look at how many guys are going other places, I guess you could say.
But also with recruits too, though, like a lot of these big name recruits are getting bigger from reportedly, getting bigger deals than some of the kids on the team. Like, how does that work with locker room friction? And hey, I'm a 2-year starter at this school, but this kid's coming in and hasn't proved anything, but he's getting way more money than me, because it's recruiting. So there's so many factors in NIL, which I find so interesting. And 5 years from now, where are we going to be with that? So it's definitely one of those things that's going to be every year. You kind of have to monitor it.
Hopefully we're in a better place in 5 years. I want to move on to something else, Corey. On3 announced this week a little shakeup to the ranking system. Previously, all 4 major sites, ESPN, On3, Rivals, and 247, were weighted equally in the On3 consensus. There is no more On3 consensus. What is the change, and what do the people need to know about how On3 is doing rankings now?
Yeah, so now it's the On3 industry ranking, and now it's On3 and 247. They have the highest percentage of how they weigh the rankings at 35% apiece. Rivals is at 20%, and then ESPN's at 10%. And I think, I worked at 3 of these places, so I have nothing but great things to say about all of them. But I know with ESPN, when it comes to Under Armour games and stuff like that, when they send out the media stuff, they refer to ESPN's rankings, which is fine. Like you said, that's who they're kind of linked with. But when it comes to day-to-day rankings, it's kind of hard because they don't really have analysts on the road anymore. So I think that was kind of the proper move to kind of bump down the percentages a little bit. I know On3, the rankings, you see from our database how much they're pouring into it. It's amazing when it comes to, from the NIL, from the NIL evaluations to the rankings. I mean, it's so advanced. So obviously On3 is right up there, and 247 does a great job as well. Rivals too. But I think right now the percentages, how it's weighed out, I think it's perfect. I think there was a lot of people in the past when it was equally weighted, maybe three of the services have one kid in a specific area of where he's ranked, and then the other one is kind of just up or down. And it would kind of really fluctuate that overall ranking. So I think you'll see a more accurate stance of where all these kids stand, when it comes to these big name kids. So definitely a big switch when it comes to the ranking system, and something I'm definitely happy they did. I think it was one thing that they kind of On3 discussed for a little bit, the back channel, something they wanted to do. And I think right now it's probably the most accurate ranking system you can go with. 24/7 composite's good too. Yeah, I mean, both of those are, I think, very accurate, and they both represent a recruitment very well.
What is the makeup of 247's composite? Do all three get 25%, or do we not know what the makeup is for the composite?
I believe it's weighted equally. I believe. I could be wrong on that. Now you said that. I know the composite, I think it's equally weighted. I could be wrong though. But I know from what I know with the On3s, I think they're the only one that's basically weighted different percentages like that. I'm pretty sure 247. I think they include ESPN. I could be wrong though.
And what did this, new formula do to Florida's 2024 signing class?
I think the biggest thing is DJ Lagway. I mean, he's a 5-star now in the industry ranking. I know fans. He dropped 14 spots in On3's rankings. And like I tell all fans, it's super early. These rankings are going to change, 4 to 6 times again over the next year, All-American games and all that. So I want to read too much into it now. We know how much these things change. But I think the biggest, for sure, was Lagway getting his 5th star. And the thing is with me, when I do my stories, I try to refer to both rankings. If a kid with On3 is a 5-star, but he's a 4-star in the industry comparison, I'll really lean on the On3 ranking because he's a 5-star there and a 4-star in the other one. But I try to include both so people have a good view of really where the whole industry sees a kid. But I know him and his family are definitely very excited now when we put out the tweets or any story to write on him. It says 5-star instead of 4-star now. And the other ones they're all about the same. Miles Graham and Darius Hayes, they're both ranked fairly high. They're both in the On 300. Chauncey Bowens, we'll see where he lands. On3 bumped him up almost 180 spots total in the On 300 ranking. So he's on the rise, big time running back down at the Benjamin School in West Palm Beach area. But we'll see. I know 247 and Rivals are going to be redoing their rankings here soon. So we'll see how much that really changes the industry ranking because we're the first ones to change them as far as right now. So the industry ranking with all the services, that might change a little bit because rankings on their end are about to come out.
All right. And then we're going to get into a busy weekend. We already talked about practice, and Corey's going to go over the recruits and commits that are coming on campus this week. But this segment is going to be brought to you by Vitamin Energy. You can see me sniffling here, and and I'm going to take one of these Vitamin Energy immune shots on air. Hopefully, all these late nights I'm having at baseball, then into this, Corey, that this immune shot will help me. I've been loving these Vitamin Energies. It gives you 7 hours of energy. It's a naturally caffeinated shot with green tea extract. There's no chemicals, there's no jitters, no crash, and no sugar. So for me, these are great. And we'll see if Zach likes his. I think he took some of these on his cruise with him. But Corey, big list. We'll start with DJ Lagway, the Gators quarterback commit. Might already have an apartment on campus as many times as he's been here. I'm sure he's looking forward to seeing that Florida-Miami baseball series as well, and we'll talk about that in a different segment. But Corey, who do the Gators have coming on, starting with DJ Lagway, and then who are some of the targets?
I think the biggest one you have to mention is Jonathan Daniels, a kid out of Pensacola. He's now the number 1 offensive tackle with On3 in the 2024 ranking. So He's a kid, very fluid, long arms, explosive out of his stance, plays defensive line too, has a really good get off. And I think it's a guy that just oozes with that long-term potential, a guy that could be, yeah, I mean, like you said, he's a former tight end too. So he's a guy who has a fairly lean frame at 275 that can really fill out nicely over the coming years. So having that, Florida just offered him a few weeks ago, which I thought it was kind of surprising they waited so long to offer him. But at the time, he was not ranked. He was a top 50 player with On3, but now, like you said, very top of the line 5-star player. So he's a guy I think Florida, they need to get some big name offensive linemen in this class. They did well last cycle too. Roger Kearney was an Under Armour All-American, but a lot of these kids in the last cycle were more interior guys with the versatility to bounce out to tackle. With Daniels, you have a guy who's a pure offensive tackle who you can kind of be a guy you can lean on over, as a multi-year starter. You also have Mario Craver. He's a 4-star wide receiver out of Alabama. Very explosive guy. Track kid too, very slippery in the open field. Just one of those slot playmakers who can really make defenders miss. You also have, as far as Josiah Davis, he's a kid out of Georgia who's just offered. He's been kind of under the radar. A guy that, his offer sheet. I mean, Florida tracked him for the last year or so. In this past year, he had 7 kickoff returns for a touchdown, 24 touchdowns overall, but Florida likes him in the secondary. So he's a guy he's a kid.
That's a wild stat.
Yeah, he's not even ranked right now. He's a kid that's under the radar who's just been climbing. And I know in the next batch of rankings, he's a guy I can see become a blue chipper. So you have him, and then BJ Gibson. That's another on 300 wide receiver that'll be visiting this weekend. It'll be his first ever visit at Florida. So I think with a lot of these kids, some big-time wide receivers obviously coming in this weekend, it'll be interesting, like you said, with no receivers coach as of right now. Both those guys have been in contact with David Doker, though, so there is some familiarity with the staff. So it'll be interesting, man. This should be a good group, about a dozen kids coming in. And
quick question to jump in there, though.
Yeah.
No wide receiver coach, but obviously you've got David Doker on staff who is talking to them. Is it more important to have DJ Lagway there, the quarterback, than to even have a coach? Because as you see every single offseason, coaches are going to change.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too is at a school like Florida, I think it's expected that you're gonna get a pretty quality wide receivers coach. And the thing is too, even if David Doker doesn't get the job, he's gonna stay on staff. I mean, bearing any major surprise. So, and then DJ Lagway, like you said, if you're a receiver, you want to be paired up with a big time quarterback. Yeah. You're gonna be there for all 3 to 5 years you'll be on campus. So having Lagway in this weekend is also big. Like you said perfectly. I mean, it's one thing visiting, knowing that DJ Lagway's committed, but being able to meet him kind of giving his thoughts on the program and what maybe he's hearing behind the scenes that maybe we're not. Either way, I think, hey, you're going to be taken care of if you go to Florida. We have a lot of talent coming in. So like I know before, it's still so early. A lot of these relationships, a lot of these kids are visiting so many schools, and this will be the first time having face-to-face interaction. So there's a lot, like you said, not having a receivers coach. Obviously, it'd be ideal if they had one, but
sure,
I don't think it's going to make a huge factor. It's going to play a huge factor with these kids visiting.
Looking at the rest of the list, who sticks out to you, Corey? And could Kai Greer get an offer this week?
Yeah, I think he's a guy who can get an offer. I mean, Kentucky's a school after him. He had Louisville. He has some Power 5 offers. Florida's been another kid. Florida's been kind of tracking from afar. I think this is one of those things they want to see him in person, measure him, see how where his weight's at and stuff like that. Fahim Delane, he's another kid. He's one of the top safeties in the country up in Maryland in the 2025 class. Florida offered about a handful of kids from that school. Aaron Childs is a linebacker at that school. He's officially visiting in the summer. He's an All-American linebacker. So it's up there in Maryland. I know when Florida went up there in January, they offered all their star players. So with Fahim Delane, he's a number 3 safety in the country, top 25 prospect overall. So getting these kids on campus, especially when they're so far away, Good Counsel is one of the best, one of the more powerhouse programs in the Northeast. So it's good to get these kids down on their own dime, build their relationship, speak to them face to face, and hopefully, with Fahim's situation, he's almost 2 years away from graduation. So hopefully you just keep getting them down on campus, kind of like what you did with DJ Lagway. Get them on campus early, build that relationship, and hopefully it's enough to kind of convince the kid to move all the way down here for college, and you get an official visit and kind of just put all the chips on the table.
We've had some good players from there. Joe Hayden's from around that area. And Tease, Jalen, I don't know what he's going by now. Jalen Tabor. He used to be a Detroit Lion. What's he going by now, Corey?
I thought it was just Tease. I think you said it right. Yeah, I thought it was Tease.
All right. Well, I covered him and he was Jalen. That's how old I am now.
But yeah, you're right. Detroit Lion. I was excited when we made that pick. But I think with Florida too, though, with Florida during March, they're really, and I've kind of echoed this too with Florida's staff. Whenever they have these off-season periods where they can host kids, like last year it was last summer. Remember they hosted most of their official visitors in June. They really, like, when it's recruiting time for the staff. Yeah. Like they really take advantage of every weekend that's given to them. Even with the when it comes to contact period, you don't see coaches visit kids on the weekend that much. And I remember, Monday through Friday, you'll see them dropping at schools. But I remember with Colby Collins, they were in his house like on Saturday night. So this staff is like, when it's time to recruit, they step up, they make use of every day they can. And not even just this weekend, all the other weekends in March and up, into mid-April, you have kids coming in and multi-day visits, a lot of priority targets. So, yeah, if you're a Florida fan, this is definitely the time to kind of tune in for recruiting.
That sounds almost like you're saying there's recruiting season, Corey.
Yeah, unlike the Mullen, who didn't think it was recruiting season.
Well, it's going to be a busy week, Corey. How's the dead period worked? And tell fans what the dead period was, what we're in now, and what is coming up, until summer.
Yeah, so every year after sign day in February, it's so weird now because most kids sign in December, but you still have the February sign day. But right after February sign day, the following week, that's when you go straight into a dead period where there can be no in-person visits on or off campus. You can still text kids. If you're a junior going to your senior class, obviously communication can start as far as texting September 1st of your junior year. So you can still text kids, DM with those kids, FaceTime, but no face-to-face interaction as far as in-person can happen. So after that second sign day, it's pretty just, communication from afar, building relationships. But now that it's March, it's basically, it's the dead period has been lifted. Coaches can't get on the road. That's the evaluation period. That's more in April. That's when they're on the road, going to spring practices, seeing kids up close, kind of just like, that's when a lot of offers hand out. You go on the road, you build those relationships with different coaches and at high schools. But right now for the month of March, it's only prospects can only go to the campuses. So that's why Florida, you'll be seeing so many kids going to campus and visiting Florida, the Georgias and Alabamas of the world. So coaches are just on campus, welcome to get as many kids as they can to see the school and all that. So it's a busy time.
All right. Well, yeah, there's no one better covering Florida Gators recruiting than Corey Bender. Make sure you're following his updates as the Gators get into spring camp this week. And that means plenty of guys on campus. We're going to jump into a break here. And after that, we're going to bring you back with Adam Lichtenstein, who is the Miami Hurricanes beat writer for the Sun Sentinel down there in South Florida, to preview the Florida Gators and Miami Hurricanes top 25 baseball matchup.
What's up, Florida fans? Wanted to encourage all of you to go check out rogueshop.com if you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress. Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC, edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, candles, massage oils, pain creams, and topicals. Rogue Shop is a true small business, disabled, veteran-owned, Black-owned, woman-owned company. They have 5 employees and make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. Visit rogueshop.com. That's ROGUESHOP.com.
Welcome back. I'm happy to be joined by a longtime friend and I almost say Gators beat reporter. That's a whole nother lifetime ago, Adam, at the Alligator. Sun Sentinel writer and Miami Hurricane beat reporter Adam Lichtenstein. Well, once upon a time, Adam was a Gator undergrad, and that's where we met. Adam, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, a lot of good memories in the McKeithen Stadium press box. Fewer good memories in the Ben Hill Griffin press box. The year I covered the team, they were 4-8. So I think a lot of people would rather forget that.
Bad news for you, Adam. In terms of Midtown, the buildings that occupy, or that Balls, Salty, and Grog occupy, were sold to a developer. I think the days are numbered for one of my favorite watering holes, Salty Dog.
Yeah, R.I.P. It just seems like, I haven't been back in 4.5 years since 2018, and even then, it was like, I was going around town with my wife, who was also a UF grad, and we're just like, what is this? There's no
where are we?
Yeah, where did that vacant lot on like the corner of 13th and University go? There's a building there now. Like there's a Target right around the corner from campus. Like kids these days have it too easy, but yeah, just Gainesville, it changes so fast. It really is crazy, and yeah, a lot of like R.I.P. Burrito Brothers, like everything. All my Leo's. I went to Leo's on the corner of like 13th and University a lot when the Alligator office was down there. Rip to the Alligator office, dearly departed.
This segment sponsored by Nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Adam's here to talk about Florida and Miami. We got a little know before you go segment here because listen, I was at the game Wednesday. The announced attendance was 4,400. I think they were counting fingers and appendages. But this week, all the reserve seats for Friday and Saturday are sold out. Can't get a seat back. That's 7,000. And the parking lot's a little small, so the general admission is going to be tight. You can still come to the game, come to Condren Ballpark and try to get some of those general admission berm tickets. But just so you know, it's going to be a tight squeeze getting into Condren Ballpark. They might try to take the fire marshal out to Embers, get him a nice steak dinner, keep him away from the field as they try to pack some people into the outfield there. But it should be an electric atmosphere on Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday for the series recap. We are doing our anti-rain dance Saturday. It looks terrible in Gainesville on Saturday. So hopefully they get the game in. But let's get into the game. Florida is coming off of a 1-1 midweek split with the JU Dolphins. The bullpen faltered again, which is becoming a theme. Bullpen faltered on Wednesday in a loss to the Dolphins. The Canes are also coming off of a loss to a really good FAU team. And I think a lot of casual fans might see, they lost to FAU. That's embarrassing. It's like, FAU's 7-1. They're a really good baseball program. JU also good baseball program. There's just so much talent inside the state of Florida. We brought Adam on to talk a little bit more knowledgeably than I can about the Miami Hurricanes. Adam, what happened on Tuesday against FAU?
Well, really, the biggest problem on Tuesday, the bats were fine. Ian Farrow, who was a transfer from FGCU, I think went 5 for 5. It was just the pitching. And that's kind of been the story of the season, the early season so far, is that when the pitching is good, they're good. And when it's not, they struggle. Ben Chestnut's a transfer into the program, and he had a bit of another rough start on Tuesday against FAU. I think, but he probably won't see him this weekend because he's a midweek starter. But he got off to a rough start, and then Miami was just kind of trying to get their way out of that hole from the start.
And Miami's had a good season up until that point. We're just ranked number 22. We'll see. Depends on what they do this week if they will stay ranked. Gino DeMar has done a really good job taking over for a legendary coach. What do the Canes look like on the on the mound in terms of Friday, Saturday, Sunday starters?
Well, through the first 2 weekends, they haven't announced their starters for this weekend yet, but Gage Zeal was the starter, the Friday night starter the last 2 weeks. And both of those starts have been rough. First start, opening night against Penn State, his first career start in college. He was a middle reliever last year, or a late reliever last year. And he just kind of got hammered early. Like Penn State was all over his pitches. Really, not the start you want, in front of a packed stadium on opening night. Then he comes back against Dartmouth last week, has another, rough start to the game. I think gave up 4 runs in the first 2 innings, settles down, gives them 5 total with like 4 earned runs, which, is not horrible. Like he didn't get, pushed out of the game in the, the 3rd inning or anything, but not ideal for your first 2 college starts. I think he's got an ERA, through 2 games of like 11 something, which is not ideal.
Not ideal.
No. But after that, their pitching's been pretty solid. Carson Liggins in his sophomore year, he was pretty impressive, especially early last year as a freshman. Really entrenched himself in the weekend rotation. He's been the Saturday starter the last 2 weeks and put up two pretty good performances. And then Alejandro Rosario has been following him up, as a Sunday starter, and he's also, had a couple good games to start the year.
At the plate, it looks like Yo-Yo Morales is up to his normal tricks. He started in all 9 games, hitting 422 or 424, excuse me, with 4 home runs. Really fun player to watch, Adam.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's definitely I started covering the team last year, and everyone was raving about this guy, coming off a great freshman year, and he didn't disappoint last year. Mm-hmm. And he's back for his junior season, and he's a Golden Spikes watch list guy, preseason All-American. Like, all the hype is there, and he's lived up to it. Like, I was joking with someone in the press box on opening night. He's joking, Yo-Yo's going to hit hit a home run, 110 off the bat, 410 feet, something like that. And he didn't. He had a double. And I checked with the SID down here, Josh White, and I'm like, just curious, he laced that double. How hard was that? And he goes, 113. Like, dude hits lasers. He's a great player. He's good on defense. Like, really an all around really, really good player.
Who are some of the other guys? I know there's CJ Kafis, Zach Levinson is leading the team hitting. It's hard to hit. Not if you're Zach Levinson, 14 for 28 on the year.
Yeah, I mean, their lineup's been really, really good so far. I like CJ Kafis a lot. I actually covered him in high school. He's a mm-hmm. South Florida guy from Palm Beach Central. He's a really solid first baseman and kind of rare for first baseman. He gives you speed. I think he stole, if I'm remembering this right off the top of my head, 16 bases last year. I don't think he has one this year, but he can run. Then you got, I mentioned Ian Farrow, who mm-hmm. has some really good pop. Got off to a bit of a slow start for the first couple of weeks, but like I said, went 5 for 5 the other night. Blake Sears, a freshman who can really hit the ball hard. He's got 3 home runs already through 2 weeks of college ball. And then Zach Levinson's been out of this world so far, hitting 500 with a 1500 OPS. Like, he's got 8 walks already, so he's got a good eye. Like, 3 homers. Like, this team can hit. Like I said earlier, the pitching is what's going to make or break the team, but they can hit.
If you look at this Florida-Miami series, the way the Gators have been pitching, specifically out of the bullpen, Kevin O'Sullivan is almost at a loss for words in press conferences. He's like, our pitchers on the weekend will go at least 6 innings, and then we have a closer. He's like, we're literally just asking for 4 to 6 outs, and we can't find somebody in the bullpen to give us those 4 to 6 outs. Florida needs to figure something out in the bullpen. When you look at this Miami lineup and you look at this Florida lineup, we might have some football scores this weekend because both teams can really swing it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Hurricanes bullpen has been pretty solid so far. They at the back of the bullpen, they got Andrew Walters, who, flame-throwing closer, debuted in that role last year and was an All-American in it after taking over for Carson Palmquist. Like, back of the bullpen, kind of the same thing, lockdown. They had some, good performances so far out of the pen. I like Chris Cinta, another guy who I covered in high school from Taravella. He's been really solid in 4 appearances. Carlos Lequerca's been solid. Ronaldo Gallo's been good. Like, they've got guys in the pen. I wouldn't say it's like a lockdown. If you got to leave and the starters out, it's over. But it's been solid so far.
And it'll be a big weekend with the bats. I'm interested, though, to see how Florida's starting pitching does. They've been lights out, but you haven't really faced a tough opponent yet. Charleston Southern was picked to finish 7th in their conference on the weekend. Cincinnati finished picked 6th in their conference. This will be the first true test for Brandon Sproat, Hurston Waldrop, and then Mr. Do-It-All, Jack Caglione. So I'm interested to see how Florida's starting pitching, who has been great, does against a better lineup. Adam, Last thing, I'll get you out of here. Not baseball related, but I'm reminded as my in-laws or future in-laws and my parents are coming up, there's a bridal shower this week. I need a piece of advice as a married man yourself. Help me out. Get me to the altar and keep me married.
My biggest advice from wedding planning, do as much as you can. I mean, like for me, I like looking at things like, flower, the decoration, stuff like that.
I'm useless.
Yeah, I'm like whatever you like. I want to be like whatever you like. I have no opinion, but from what my wife would tell me, like, that's not always helpful. Because she doesn't want to just pick out what she wants. She wants to talk about it. So try to be as useful as possible, as helpful as possible. Sometimes I've told my wife this, so it's no surprise to her. I'll fake an opinion. I'll be like, oh yeah, definitely that one. Like I love that. Like yeah, it's great. And just to, make a choice, to not leave all the mental load, for planning the wedding on her. That's my biggest advice. Even if you don't have a strong opinion on something, pick something. It's such she's asking, that, and just, be there for support if she's upset. Like another thing I learned just, being with my wife, it's not always about giving advice or finding a solution. Just sometimes about just listening and hearing her out. That's very important. So I'm just like, sometimes like, yeah, I totally understand that stinks. Like I'm here for you. That I'm here to support you. So that's the best advice I can probably give.
I'll try to take that. I'll try to take that, and hopefully we make it to the altar. But we definitely are having the bachelor party.
Of course, very important.
Win or lose, we still bachelor party. We want to thank Adam for coming on the Gators Online show. Florida, Miami, 6:30 Friday, 2 p.m. Saturday, and a nooner on Sunday to close out the series. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell, give your notifications. For Adam, I'm Nick. We'll see you next week back in the saddle with Zach Albaverdi.